My name is Jose Franco. My store is on 15th Street, 7th Avenue. It's 100% organic, and I think Gali, the appeal of my story was it deals with changes that I went through with my family and changes that I went through myself. Back in 2010, I went on a trip to Puerto Rico to meet my daughter to meet my dad for the first time. I didn't grow up with my dad, so I went and I took that trip. And when I went, I was weighing 252 pounds. So in that trip, and the funny thing is, I was 252 pounds, but you couldn't tell me I was heavy. It's just my ego, whatever the case was. So when I took the trip, and my daughter met my dad, I find out that my dad is diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I was like, oh, okay. But what my dad didn't know was that a big reason for the trip was for me to kind of decompress, because my mom has just had a double mastectomy. So my mom had a double mastectomy, and here's my dad, prostate cancer. And so this is my gene pool. And the thing that was an eye-opener for me, before my dad left to Puerto Rico, he wore a coat from New York. And the coat he wore, he had. And he says to me, why don't you go in the closet and take my jacket, you can have it. And he was like 257, 258 pounds. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, it's not going to fit me if it fits you. He's like, have you looked at yourself? This is you. So pretty much I went, put on the jacket, and putting on that jacket was such a realization. And I had my dad with prostate cancer. I'm like, this is me. The jacket fit. So 3 years before, I had friends that were trying to start a family. And when they were trying to start a family, they did in vitro, they did a bunch of stuff. But one of their friends said, you guys are spending all this money on this. Why don't you eat clean? Why don't you just try to see if you do cleanse, you eat clean, and see if that helps. So they started. I knew of this because my wife told me this, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I ran into them 6 weeks after they were doing this. And remember, they're trying to start a family. It wasn't aesthetics. It wasn't anything like that. When I ran into them, it was like I ran into two different people. He had lost 35 pounds. She had lost 30 pounds. But they were just radiant. There was something, they were just radiant. I was like, wow. And this was in 2006. So it registered in 2006. I said to myself when I came back from the trip from Puerto Rico in 2010, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to do it. So what I said to myself is, I'm going to take it one day at a time, and I'm going to just drink juices, and I'm going to walk. Because you can be 80 years old, and you can just go for a walk. It doesn't matter what your age is. It's not something that hinders. You don't have to run a marathon or anything. So I said, okay, I'll go start walking. So I first started making smoothies of vegetable juice and whatnot, and then gradually from my reading, like after 5 days, I said, I'm just doing juices. I started a juice cleanse. And in the first 60 days that I did this, I lost 50 pounds. In the first 120 days that I made this change, I lost 70 pounds. And I wish that I was a better person to say that it was solely just, because of my concern of health. A lot of it was ego and aesthetic. But the thing that happened that blew my mind in that journey, I became spiritual. Not pushy spiritual, not I'll guilt you until you join me spiritual. Spiritual in the sense that I feel that I've connected with the universal, and I feel that even though I don't know any of you really, I love you. And it may sound crazy to some of you, or some of you may be in that same wavelength, and if you are, then you believe. So all this happening, all this change, all this weight, and my business, I've had my own business for a long time. I sold jewelry. And my business, the industry I was in, I was doing wholesale jewelry, was going through change. So I said, you know what? If I want to lead the life that I want with my family, for me it's important being around my daughter, being around my wife, and my industry was at a point that with my skill set, I would have to travel and be outside the country maybe 40-50% of the time. What are the trade-offs, and is it something that's in line with what works for my family? Every family is different. So I'm fortunate that my wife is like my cheerleader, but she's also sensible, and she's like, but come up with a plan. She's like, think of something that you can do that's in line with how you're feeling, and do the research, do the homework. And since I've had my own business before, the idea of Stoop Juice began. So from that was the genesis, and it was in part because there weren't any shops that were 100% organic. And that was my thing. That was, I want a shop that's 100% organic. And 6 years later, this is, fast forward, we're here. What's happened in the process, it's amazing along the lines of the business is sustainable. I'm never, unless something scalable happens, I'm never going to make the money that I made when I sold jewelry. That's not going to happen. But I'm in a place that I'm happy. I'm in a place that I'm surrounded by love, energy. I've been able to experience scores of other people's stories that I can't tell you the countless times that people come in, someone just had treatment and they need to make an adjustment in their diet. So the first thing I say to them is check with your doctor, and then it's just creating protocols that's in line with the situation. So you do that, and then to be in a space for people to come back a month later, 2 months later, that they buy into it, and for you to see the change, in their life. And you're not going to fix everything, but just the change and the shift. It's scores of stories of people creating plans of how they nourish themselves. So for me, that's pretty much the fun part.